How do you measure the distance between you and the next person if you have to observe social distancing, especially if you're visually impaired? That is difficult. But that's exactly the situation that some visually impaired persons say they're faced with. They cite the social distancing protocol as the most difficult to observe, and that puts them at a greater risk of contracting the virus. Chairman of the governing board of the National Council of Persons with Disability, Yao Ofori Deborah, revealed this to JoyNews after they received some donations from businessman Ibrahim Mahama.
When the imposition of the restrictions of COVID-19 started, persons with disability throughout the country have been calling on the National Council to make necessary contacts for them to get support because they are at home and they are not able to move out as a result of the social distancing. You know, many of them are jobless. We always find them in the streets, and this time they are not able to come to the streets. So the only way to survive is to get charitable support from those who are well placed in society who can give them. So since then, we have made a lot of contacts, and we have not been so successful. But our brother, Mr. Ibrahim Mahama, and kindly, he has been able to give us this fantastic donation. And for that matter, we are very grateful for Mr. Ibrahim Mahama, who has responded generously to our outcry. So on behalf of all persons with disability who are going to benefit from these items, we say a big thank you to Mr. Ibrahim Mahama, and we are appealing to institutions, charitable organizations, and all those who have to come to the aid of persons with disability who should remain at home because of the possibility of contracting the COVID-19.
Similar items were also donated to the St. James Catholic Church in Osu to help alleviate the plight of persons impacted by the imposition of restrictions due to COVID-19. Aide to Mr. Mahama, Rafiq Mahama, who made the presentation, said the gesture is one of many and that's aimed at helping the most vulnerable.
We are here to do I'm here to do a presentation on behalf of Mr. Ibrahim Mahama, the CEO of Engineers and Planners. We are presenting these food items to our brothers and sisters here. And basically that's the reason why we are giving them foodstuffs, which is 100 bags of rice, 720 pieces of cooking oil, 720 pieces of mackerel, 720 pieces of tomato paste as well. Basically, this is not the first time we are doing this. Even we've been reaching out to them every time that we notice they are in discomfort. And basically, that's why we reach out to them. Even last year, we were able to help them and do a cash donation to them. That was 22,000 cedis. And my boss, Mr. Ibrahim Mahama, see them as partners, and whenever they reach out to us, we have to help them in that regard.
COVID-19 will put 85 million children at risk of physical, sexual and emotional violence over the next 3 months as the vital isolation measures force them to stay at home. And that's the warning from the international faith-based aid agency World Vision in its latest report. The finding says that coronavirus pandemic poses a new global threat to children's safety as quarantine measures isolate families and economic and social pressures take a toll on the same. Ghanaian children are not exempted from this finding, as already cases are being reported of parents and guardians abusing children at home. Let's get on the line for a discussion with Gregory Derry. He is Director of Child Protection and Advocacy Manager at World Vision. Hello, Mr. Derry. I can see you moving your lips, but I can't hear you. Let's try this again. Hello, can you hear me? Looks like Mr. Derry cannot hear me. Let's try and get him back on the line for more of that. But let me know what your own frustrations with your children being at home is. Last week we reported of a father who beat up his very young child. Just this morning or yesterday, Dofsu has in custody another gentleman who beat up, actually chopped off part of his son's ears and puts his hand in fire for stealing, according to his father, stealing 250 cedis. That's the situation we'll be connecting to the Dofsu or the Ghana Police Service on. So what is really happening? And as we're hearing World Vision say, these are likely to occur even more in the next 3 months. Why? People are at home, economic situations are not the best. It's taking a toll on parents, it's taking a toll on families who are then taking it out on their children. Let me go back to Mr. Derry. Mr. Derry, can you hear me?
Hello?
Right, I hear you perfectly. Thank you for your time this afternoon. So what does your report highlight as the key factors leading to this abuse we're seeing on children?
Okay, thank you to your cherished listeners. As you rightly said, the effect of COVID-19 on children is massive across the globe, and Ghana is not an exception. You know, the kind of situation parents find themselves and children find themselves is a very difficult one. Schools have closed, children have to stay at home. And as I said earlier in some other discussion, this has created some kinds of tensions because parents have lost their livelihood, they have lost their jobs, they are thinking of what to do, and at the same time, the care of children is something that they also have to take care of. And this is sometimes translated into various forms of violence against children and child protection issues. So like you mentioned, in Ghana, we have experienced in the field several issues, several reports on child marriage, which is a fallout of COVID. Parents trying to give out their daughters so that they can make ends meet to be able to take care of their children or reduce the burden of care at home. You have a lot of children who are virtually abused every day. They are beaten. Corporal punishment has become a norm. Okay? You see it as a normal thing. People just gloss over it as it happens, but that is not the situation. It shouldn't be so. We have a number of child sexual abuse cases that have been reported, rape among others. So these are very massive issues that have, as a result of the fallout. We are not saying that they never happened. They happened, but the rate as which they are being reported of late is very, very alarming. So as an organization that is child focused and working in communities, we think that we need to collaborate with various agencies, including government, to see how these issues can be addressed. And then we are looking at one, parents need psychosocial support. These are abnormal times, and we shouldn't take things for granted. Okay? And we want to look at the whole basket of psychosocial support, including empowering parents with information and knowledge on how to live with, how to care for their children. Okay? Balancing the scale between family problems, personal problems, and care for children is usually a big challenge for many parents who, at the end of the day, translate their frustration and anger into other forms of abuse against children. We think that educating them is very critical, providing that psychosocial support, keep them mentally stable, is also very, very important.
Let me just come in with the bit of the, getting psychosocial support. That's not something that's very common here in Ghana. So I'm wondering how exactly the World Vision, intends to lead this charge. What is the strategy?
Yeah, so World Vision as an organization, we partner. We work with various agencies that have capacities in various fields, and we are very in touch with them, the faith-based organizations, the social workers, and others, so that as we bring our efforts together, it's something that we think we will be able to contribute to in addressing. Okay, so the next issue I want to talk about is the avenues for child protection, reporting, and referral. We have said that about 85 million children across the globe will be affected or are likely going to be affected, but many cases will go unattended or unseen. So we think that strengthening the child protection, reporting, and referral system where children can make reports and be listened to in terms of provision of toll-free lines. We already have some lines in Ghana, but making them also accessible to children in very remote areas who can also make reports on how they feel, how they are being treated, and all those things will be important. And let me mention, as I mentioned earlier, because of the issues of livelihood, parents begin to change their mode of behavior towards their children. One area that we are working on and also collaborating with government and other state institutions has to do with the social protection component. How do we ensure that families have enough food? How do we ensure that families are able to take care of their children? So livelihood, ensuring that mothers and very poor parents have some work to do, or that the fathers in the communities have some form of livelihood that can earn them some income. That will go a long way to ensure that families are stable, parents are no longer thinking too much on when and how to be able to get the next meal for their children.
Right.
We think that this, together with several other interventions that are being rolled out by government, will be very appropriate in providing some of comfort during this difficult period of COVID-19.
But before you go, I just want to find out which areas did your work find had the most child abuse cases? Which areas?
So for our operations in Ghana, I have received so many cases from the northern region.
Okay.
I have received some cases from central region. I've also received some cases from the OT region, but the majority of cases are coming from the northern region, where we have a very large operational base.
Okay. I mean, just between last week and this week, we've recorded cases from the Ashanti region this afternoon as well. Well, this morning we're hearing of one also somewhere in near Kaswa, I should say. In this case, in these cases that you have, what does the trend reveal? Does it show that these are people from broken homes? Because in both cases that I'm referring to, what happened last week and what's happening this week, the parents are not together. Is that a trend as well?
In our situation, it's quite different. These are parents that are still in union. The children are living with their parents, and yet the abuses are happening. It is the parents who are giving them out in marriage. In fact, in one particular situation, we found the father of a daughter who was almost trying to kill her if she refused to accept the marriage proposal. It isn't that these children are living with other people. Then where you have issues of negligence, the parents are there, but they just don't care. They think that their children have an antidote to COVID-19, or as I put it, they are anti-COVID-19. Children are left roaming about aimlessly, loitering without mask, without any protective facility that will also guard them against the virus. So in our context, these are challenges that are mostly with children who are living with their parents. And
do you also find that most of these cases are fathers? I mean, most of these child abuse cases, we've seen what happened last week was the father. What happened this week is the father who cut off part of the ears of this boy and puts the hands in fire. It's a father. What are the demographics of the people involved in these child abuse cases?
Yeah, so where there are issues of sexual abuse or of sexual nature, mostly is the men. Like the example I cited earlier about the girl being forced to marry, it was the father, not the mother. But we have had other issues of a 50-year-old man who defiled a 14-year-old girl. This is obviously a crazy man, if you permit my word. The scenario of abuse is seen mostly when it comes to inflicting that kind of pain or sexual abuse is mostly from the men. We know that the mothers also, in one way or the other, abuse their children, but we don't see that severity. The mother might scold, they might shout out, they might attempt to discipline the child in one way that we might say it is severe. But many of the reports that we are receiving are coming from the side of the men who are abusing the children.
Mr. Derry, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Gregory Derry is Director of Child Protection with World Vision, joining us there with their thoughts on what's happening. But like I said, how is this taking a toll on you yourself?